welcome to the University Network TV, where we scan the globe to give students, their families, and educators the very best tips for student success. I'm your host today, Dr. Crystal Rose, and in this college admission series, we're exploring sports in college, top 3 timelines for the high school athlete to consider. Now, if you're an athlete and you want to continue your sports experience in college, then you'll want to stay tuned for these top 3 timelines for the high school athlete. For today's conversation, we're inviting a very special guest, April Paris Joseph of Paris Educational Solutions. Welcome, April.
Thanks.
So, to start off, can you share with us who should enter this timeline?
Okay, so there's the ugly stat that says right off, 7%. 7% of kids that are competing in sports at the high school level are going to move on to the next level. So the inclination is to say, are you a top 7% athlete? But I think more important than that is the question of whether or not the athlete wants to do this at the next level. It's a huge time and life commitment. And so they really have to know that they're interested in that. They're excited about it. They want their life in college to be that consumed by their sport. And it will be their social group. It will take up their weekends. It will be everything. Dinner every night practically for most of these athletes.
How many timelines are there for high school students, athletes to consider?
So generally speaking, there are 3 distinct timelines. One for each of the 3 major divisions, 1, 2, and 3.
So in Division 1 timeline, when can students reach out to college coaches?
So Division 1 is the toughest. You started with the hardest one because the timelines vary depending on the student's sport. So in broad strokes, though, those conversations can begin September 1st of the junior year. So when the student enters into their junior year of high school. That's the broad answer. Each sport, and I really encourage every student to get on the NCAA site and find the current contact rules for the sport that they're playing and interested in playing. There are blackout periods, there are no contact periods. And usually what this means is that the coach can't come back and respond to the student or engage with the student and the family. Again, broad strokes generally, the student can reach out anytime they want and anytime that they feel like they're ready to have that communication.
So I asked you when can they reach out, but when is the most effective for students to reach out, even considering the blackout periods?
Yeah, so I'm always going to caveat a little bit. It always depends a lot on the sport, but I like for my student athletes to really get started on communicating with coaches as a sophomore, just putting their name out in front of them and their film and their content.
In the Division 2 timeline, when may students connect with coaches? Is that different?
It is a little different. So Division 2 is like a year earlier, July 15th between the sophomore and the junior year. The back and forth communication can begin, which is why I like to start this as a sophomore, because that's the open window for both of those divisions, both divisions that offer scholarships.
So when is the most effective time for students in the Division 2 timeline to reach out to the coaches?
That's about the same. That sophomore year window, I think, is a really critical one for the student athlete to really decide that they want to do this and to start doing this work.
Wonderful. And for the Division 3 timeline, students are able to reach out to their coaches as well. So when are they first able to reach out to the coaches?
So Division 3 is the least regulated of the 3 divisions. So they can reach out pretty much whenever they want. They can start as early as their freshman year. And you will see Division 3 athletics recruiting even come together really neatly in the fall of the senior year, which is very late for Division 1 or 2, very late. But that's usually an athlete who's out playing their division.
Interesting. And so for a student in the Division 3 timeline, when is it an optimal time for them to reach out to the coaches?
I think Division 3 is the most loosely fitting. But again, I always like that sophomore year window to really get started on this. It's just my favorite point. And then it allows the student time to grow and figure out which division they're interested in. But D3, those doors can open as late as summer, and during the senior year, those doors could open. If a student decided at that point that it was something they were interested in, it's certainly worth pursuing and seeing what they can have come together. No promises, but it's worth trying.
There you have it, the top 3 timelines for the high school athlete to consider if you want to continue your sport or sports in college. We appreciate you walking us through this, April. Thank you for being on today's show.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
And thank you very much for joining us today on this episode of the University Network's television show. I'm your host, Dr. Crystal Rose. Until next time on TUN TV.